everybody. And just wanted to say a couple of words and then get on with the program because you're not here to hear me. So Peter Johnson here, and I and Dr. Silver over probably the last year and a half have been talking about a relationship between the local New Jersey IIBA chapter and Rutgers. And this is the second time that Peter is talking here, and the chapter is here, so we're happy about that. And what we're looking to do is to develop that further. And we're doing that for several reasons. For the Rutgers side, I think it's really important for we as the teachers and the students at Rutgers to actually know what's going on in business, you know, in the real world. Whatever your subject that you're working on, business is involved in it, whether it's technical or not. And many of the jobs that our students are responding to or looking at have the words business analysis in it, and it's a little confusing what that is. So we're hoping through a series of talks and a relationship that we'll begin to understand what that is better, and also be able to bring some of that material into the courses that we teach. So the talks are one part of it, and then our own private talks to try and get some of that started is what our objective is. And the second part is that we'd like to introduce our students back to IIBA, form relationships, mentoring relationships, maybe seed jobs, and have you get to know who our students are, and you in the audience get to know the students and, you know, like us and hire us and, you know, do projects with us, whether for pay or not pay. So I think it's a two-way street. So that's the objective on both sides. So the plan for tonight is this is the regular monthly meeting of the IIBA, and there's a talk. Peter is giving me the talk again. And I'm just going to turn it over to Ashish, who is leading the New Jersey chapter, to tell you a little bit more about what's happening tonight and the chapter and the talk.
Thank you, Dr. Richmond. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ashish Rao. I'm the VP of Marketing at IIBA in New Jersey, and we are very excited to be part of this relationship with Rutgers and IIBA in New Jersey. And before our presentation, Peter Johnson, our founding member, is going to give us a fantastic presentation, I'm sure. But just before that, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. So we usually meet in Iceland, the Microsoft office, every second Thursday of the month if anybody's interested in being there physically. We also have the virtual options. I believe there are 5-10 people right now, people still joining in. So both those options are available. And we're also looking at other locations around New Jersey, Bellworks, and a few others that we have in mind. And the idea is to have a good balance between virtual and physical options. So it would be great if you can attend physically, you can meet people, network with people, but the virtual option is always available. We have a lot of good events coming up. We have the MVP of Microsoft who's going to present in April, and he's going to be talking about Visio. As you know, Visio is a process diagramming tool, and it's very useful for business analysts. It's going to be he actually works for Microsoft, so this is going to be a very core presentation. There's going to be another interesting presentation about creative problem solving in May, and then of special interest to you students would be the Recruiter Night in June, and more information will follow. Another new thing that we're coming up with is a design SIG. I myself, I'm a BA with AT&T, and I work on the Sales Express application, which is a mobile application, which allows salespeople to put in orders that they get when they're around the place. And it's something new. It's happening all over the place. Digital transformation is what they call it now, many places. And this is something that we think a lot of students should get engaged in earlier on, and I'm sure everybody is excited about this. And so if you want to learn more about this, please approach me after this presentation, and we can talk more about it. We also have different levels of certification if you're interested in pursuing that end. The certification study groups at varying levels, intro level, business analyst, and then business analyst with experience, and so on and so forth. So if anybody is interested in that, please let us know at this email alias. We have a bunch of webinars online. You can go to our site, you can go to the corporate site, and all of these webinars are available, mostly free of cost, so please do check them out. And I will let Josh introduce the speaker. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I've written some notes on Peter's credentials, and I'm sure you can find all that online, and how he was the founder of the chapter, and how he's involved with the BABOK version 3 or BABOK version 3. But I think what you're really interested in is what's in it for me. Like, what are you going to get out of this presentation? So I'll give you a testimonial. About a year ago, we had a chapter meeting, the board, for our yearly strategy, and Peter used the business model canvas to help guide the meeting, and with our limited resources of both budget and people, and time people had to spend as volunteers, it really focused us on who our stakeholders were, what our goals should be that we want to achieve, and all facets of running almost as a small business, how we could most efficiently use our resources. And so I found that the business canvas model really helped us. So just as personal testimonial, this is really good stuff, and you will come out from this presentation learning something that you could probably use in the next few weeks or so. And with that, I'll turn over to Peter. One other thing. So, can you go back? We had some questions about how to sign up for email. So right here on the main page, anybody at home can see it on the screen. There's right below the black bar, there's the third click is the sign up for email. That's how you can get on our contact list. And you won't be bombarded too much. It'll be mainly something from me telling you upcoming events and things like that. So that's all.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Ashish. Thank you, Dr. Silver. Thank you, Dr. Richmond. Thank you for everybody who's here. This is a great, great turnout. I'm glad that we're able to appeal to so many people from school in different capacities, either you're a current student in the program or you're from other areas. Maybe you're about to graduate. Maybe you've been out in the world doing different things like business analysis, looking for different career opportunities. This is exactly why it's so important for us to be able to bring what we know as an association, as a professional association, together with what you know as an academic institution, and hopefully we'll add that third leg very soon, which is what all of our business community knows, and bring all three elements together, and we'll start to do things like maybe help you get capstone projects, help find internships, and we'll make this a regular partnership for all three groups. So that's what gets me really excited. And again, thank you for reaching out that first time in 2015. Seems like so long ago in today's time period. So years flash by. But we started that discussion then, and we're going to finish that discussion this time. And we're going to get that partnership working, right? So thank you again for this opportunity. It's my pleasure to be able to do things like this. I speak at different chapter meetings. I speak at conferences. I do a lot of teaching for companies. So I work with a lot of business analysts, or let me put it another way, a lot of people who do business analysis, little b, little a, here and even throughout the world. When I'm lucky, I get a chance to work in Poland or India or Hong Kong or Singapore or someplace really exciting, South Africa, and the more exposure you get, the more fun it is. If I should say anything about business analysis, it's a fun profession. If you get into that part of helping people solve problems in a way that they hadn't thought of before or didn't know how to use, you're into business analysis. And just one other thought based on what Josh and others were saying earlier, you could almost consider business analysis to be a life skill. You can apply it to anything, right? You save marriages, relationships, if you know how to do business analysis. And to Josh's anecdote about working with the business, with our chapter, why wouldn't we use business analysis skills to help solve what in essence is a nonprofit organization and how that organization has different problems to solve? So anyway, those types of things helped me come up with this particular presentation, which is how to think of business analysis as a business. And what are some of the tools and techniques that we can use to do that? And beyond that, what are some of the implications we can draw from that for people who are, like you, students and perhaps into the working world? So hence, we came up with this metaphor of the BA Café. Right? That is going to be our business that we will study. Imagine that you were to open your own business. As an individual, maybe you're working with a group of people. You might be currently structured in IT, or you might be structured somewhere in a product group, right? But imagine that you're working as a business, right? What would you need in order to strive and thrive as a business? Think about it. Give me an example. Marketing. You need to market what? Yourself, or your organization, or your skill set, or your value. Exactly, because if you don't do that, what happens? What happens with any business that fails to be able to explain its value? It closes, right? So we're going to learn how to think about business analysis in business terms. What does a business have? What's one thing every business needs to have? Assets, right? What else do you need to have, even before assets? Customers. Good idea to have a customer, right? Somebody who wants your service. It's amazing how you get the exact word that's going to come up on the screen, isn't it? What else does a business have besides customers? Talked about assets. What else? Products. What else? A team. Great. What else? Employees, right? There's all these things. Now, if we were just to start talking about business analysis of business and we didn't have any structured way of doing it, we'd be a little bit abstract. We'd be all over the map. How about if we had a way to visualize what this business is all about? So after we finish coming up with a lot of these different ideas on what a business needs to have in business terms, let's see how we can visualize something like business value. So let's start with customers. What if we thought about our customers in terms of, well, there's different kinds of customers, right? They're not all the same. So let's think of a persona. Are you familiar with the term persona? What's a persona? Oh, I love that. Characteristics of an actor or a customer. What would be a persona that might apply to business analysis? Sarah. What would be a persona of someone that might apply to this business of business analysis, just to give it a face? Okay. Right, and there might be any number of different people who do that, right? And we'll see that there are a number of different people. So we're going to develop what we're going to call customer segments, right? These will be one or more different personas for our business. What else do we want to think about? Do different customers perhaps have different needs?
Do you think they require different things in terms of products or services? Right? So let's put those together in something we're going to call our value proposition. So we have customers and we have a value proposition, meaning the offers, the services, the products that we're going to place. So we're starting to piece out this map. What else do we want to look at? Do you think each customer has perhaps a different relationship to us? Let's think about an example, not business analysis, but let's say we were in the ride for hire business. Now, I'm not thinking of a particular company. What would be a persona that would describe a customer of a ride for hire business? Good, a traveler. Excellent. Now, any number of different ways that we can describe that. Now, something changed fundamentally in the last few years. When we used to have taxi companies, and what that persona described and what the services were that were offered by taxi companies had a very specific relationship, right? But what happened? That idea of the customer changed. How did it change? What was fundamentally different? Were there different expectations of people who were looking for a way to hire a ride? And before we get into the company, right, it became somebody who was what? More technologically savvy, more into social media, more demanding. I want to know who's available, how many minutes it will take to get there, where are they? I remember standing with my son when we were ordering an Uber, and the guy was going down the wrong street in Boston, and that's fatal in Boston. He said, he's going down the wrong way. He'll never get here. He'll never get here. Cancel that one, order another one. It was that easy, right? So there were different relationships that we can have, either with the same customer or different customers. What else might we have? Different ways of getting a product or service. Right? Think about how that's delivered, and that we're going to describe as channels, delivery channels. So we're starting to put together this visualization of our business. Now, ideally, what will some of this value lead to? A willingness to pay, and therefore we're going to look for revenue streams. Right? So depending on the customer segment that we're targeting for this particular visualization, I'll come up with the value proposition, the customer relationship, the delivery channel, and what that might mean to me in terms of revenue streams. And I can look at my current model and I can understand, am I meeting that requirement or not? Am I getting the revenue stream I'm looking for? It's the beginning way to start to visualize, do I have the right strategy? But of course, we're only looking at one half of the picture. What's the other half we want to look at? Great. I'm sorry, before we get there, I jumped ahead. All these things are related, by the way. Right? So what my customer segment expects in terms of the value proposition, the relationship that we have, how well that's working, what that means in terms of delivery channels, right? All this can evolve, it can morph, it can change over time very, very simply. All right, so now we want to get to the other side. We're going to look at what is our operational model. Can we visualize that as easily? Well, what does it take to provide that business value? We might be looking at what are the processes that we have in place, right? And we'll describe that as key activities. What else are we going to need besides the processes? Somebody mentioned employees before, right? Somebody else mentioned assets before, right? Why don't we put those in a bucket that we're going to call infrastructure, right? These are our key resources. And resources aren't just people. There's all the resources that we need in order to be able to provide that particular product or service, that particular value proposition. What else do we need? Is there an expectation that if I had a business that I know how to do everything myself, that I have a completely vertical business structure? No. So what I might be looking for? Partners, what a great idea. Let's talk about partners. And of course, there's another way we can visualize that. And as we said, that leads to an understanding of cost. Right, so that's our cost structure. Well, if we put together that understanding of value with our understanding of operational capability, our revenues and our costs, we have described what is an overall business model canvas. That's the technique. This technique grew out of a dissertation by Alex Osterwalder not that long ago. He made it available. He says as long as you give him credit to a strategizer, feel free to use it. This is a technique that anyone can take advantage of. It allows us to model our business because it needs to be a current business to model it. No, it could be a concept, right? And we might conceptualize, do we have the right model? It helps us think through some of those issues. You know, if we think about the different market segments and what we were envisioning in terms of products and services, is it providing the right relationship? Do we have the right delivery channels? As you can see, all these different 9 elements can relate. All right. Let's put this together. Let's go back to our example where we wanted to talk about our hypothetical business, the BA Café. So now we're going to refocus on business analysis. Can you think of a persona that might apply to business analysis? Okay. What? How many of you work in an environment where you have projects? Okay, it's reasonable. Most companies do things the way they get them done. They have projects. And projects, we know, have what? Project managers. And project managers are looking for what? They're looking for somebody to do business analysis, right? And so that's an area where we might have, as a customer segment, a project manager. So let's just go with that for a minute. Let's run that model through and see what it looks like. What kind of a relationship might you have with a project manager? How many people are on projects with a project manager? All right, we've got enough room. What kind of a relationship traditionally applies to that? You have a lot of stakeholders, but what's the relationship with the project manager? Okay, maybe. Okay, now we're going to get to that. Hold that thought of status, but why are we providing status? Because the relationship is generally what? It's hierarchical, right? Generally, we have a well-defined project. What do we know projects have? They have a start and a stop, right? A begin date and an end date. They have timelines and milestones and deliverables, right? And so our relationship with a traditional project manager tends to be hierarchical because these are generally known as plan-driven type projects. Okay? What about delivery channels? So we mentioned, how do we go about letting that project manager know where we are? We have meetings and documents, right? And we will do what might suffice then as a product or service that we provide. Requirements, good. Let's put all this together. So the value that we are doing for that project manager to deliver things like requirements, things like facilitating, eliciting, modeling, right? We then are able to hand off validated, approved requirements. That's the general idea behind a project. Is that consistent with everyone's experience for traditional projects? Good. Let's see how that fits now in our business model canvas. So we're looking at a project manager as that persona What do we say about customer relationships? Plan-driven, and therefore tends to be hierarchical. By the way, notice we are now just doing something simple like putting sticky notes on a whiteboard. All right? This is how easy it is to do this technique. We call this low-tech wallware. All you need is a Sharpie pen, a sticky note, and a flip chart or a whiteboard, and you can do a business model canvas. So what I'm doing is taking your ideas, and I'm extracting them, and I'm putting them here onto our business model canvas. And we might even say that, to some degree, that relationship can be described as more what? Reactive. Why is that relationship probably reactive in nature? We're acting on customers' input. We're acting on a scope that's probably already determined. Right? There are things about it that we're responding to the need. We're defining the need. Right? So we tend to be reactive. We might also then, if we think about our value proposition, think about it in terms of requirements engineering. Have we heard that term, requirements engineering? Right? That means providing what? Some document. Okay. What else is a part of that value then in requirements engineering? Right? We want to be able to help meet the goals, whatever the goals of the project are. That's our value doing business analysis, is to help meet those goals. Our value is to help provide some sense of quality to those requirements. What would be a sense of quality that we would attach with requirements? Let's get more people involved. How would you assess quality when it comes to requirements? They could be testable. What are some other characteristics, quality characteristics of requirements? Achievable. What else? Traceable. Right. There are all these different things. Right. So this is a part of our value proposition. If we're not providing requirements engineering, if we're not meeting the goals, probably because they're not testable, et cetera, we're not providing value. Okay. And what's our delivery channel? Well, we said it could be, now this is a fancy term, C of E. Have you heard of C of E? A center of excellence. You work, or have you had exposure to organizations where there is a PMO, more acronyms, a project management organization, right? You can have anything that's a center of excellence, which in an organization that's relatively mature might have certain templates. So as a business analyst, what are some of the templates we often fill out? And what's a BRD? A business requirements document, a software requirement specification. I mean, you can go through the whole list, right? I was having a conversation earlier where we were talking about a traditional view of business analysis. And if you know anything, if you've been exposed to kids in karate or whatever, shu-ha-ri, shu, S-H-U, is learning the basics. And so it's like wax on, wax off, right? So these are the basic elements of doing requirements engineering, living within, forgive me, the shoebox. So there are certain expectations there. What are some of the activities that we would perform as someone doing business analysis in order to provide this value proposition to that customer segment? You have to collect the requirements, good. What else? So we do documentation, right? What was it? Interviews, right? Those are all different kinds of activities that would lead us. I don't have them all up here. What are some key resources? Doug, I think you mentioned this earlier. Stakeholders. Was that you? Someone else mentioned stakeholders? We have stakeholders, so in this case we might call them subject matter experts, maybe they're process subject matter experts. I was talking with a colleague of mine just today who was in an environment where she said a lot of people in her organization are reaching retirement age. And somebody wants to know how they do their job. And I don't know. You got to ask so-and-so. No one has ever documented what that process was. I said, Sherera, you know that organization's in trouble. They're like 4 versions behind in keeping their updates, right? Anyway, we have all kinds of key resources. So we might have process subject matter experts, people on our technical team, any number of different resources. What about partnerships? In a traditional project management type world, do we have the ability or do we often have the occasion to partner with anyone? Probably not. That's my answer. I'm seeing a lot of blank faces, and that's right. Because we don't usually partner with a lot of people, not in that sense. Right? So we don't really seek partners. We don't really have partners. So what does this mean in terms of cost structure? What's the cost structure supporting these activities with these resources? What's one element of cost structure? Time? Time on whose part? The BA's part? Anyone else? The subject matter experts, the tech team, everybody else, and all that usually gets described in this bucket we call labor. Right? It's a labor-intensive type of process, right? Are there other elements of cost? Let me ask it another way. Are there sometimes hidden elements of cost? Let's make the assumption that every project does not go perfectly well. Now, I know that that's not in your experience, and there's the magic word, right? Delays, rework. These are also cost elements, okay? Let's go to the other side of the picture. What about revenue streams? What great revenue stream do we create in business analysis if we're doing wax on, wax off, causing delays? You think we provide a lot of value? At least tangible value. And here's the problem. Tell me, for any of you who have been working in this environment, do you see companies expanding the business analysis role to do more and more requirements engineering? Or do you see the opposite? I see in a lot of my contacts the opposite. People are diminishing the number of business analysts. Why? What are they not recognizing? They're not recognizing the value if we're not providing the value. And that's a key lesson, right? So if we're working at an organization and we don't see this role of business analysis expanding, we don't see it growing, we don't see opportunities, if we're simply living in the shoebox, and of course I've biased in this because I want to draw a contrast, but I hope this is illustrative. If we're not providing that value, then chances are what we are doing is not perceived that highly. I was talking with another organization recently. It's actually a class about Agile, and we're talking about the different roles on an Agile team, and I was kind of challenging the people in the class, what's the role of a business analyst on an Agile team? I don't know how many people have worked in Agile. I'll do some abbreviation here rather than go into a whole explanation. But you have developers, you have testers, you have all kinds of people doing work, right? You have a Scrum Master, perhaps, who's helping to make sure everybody understands Agile principles. You have a product owner who needs whatever it is you're working on. And what's the role of the business analyst? If I'm bringing the subject matter expert directly in contact with the developer and they're having a conversation, the business analyst is like the third person on a date. That comment did not go over well with this one company because they were representing the HR department. And they said, oh, well, our BAs, we're down, they're at the lowest level. That was their entry-level function for that organization, right? And they thought I was disparaging the BA role, or the BA, And so you're not going to convince VAs to do a lot of other things if you keep talking about their roles can disappear like they're not necessary. And that wasn't my point at all. My point was what? We need to reimagine the value that we provide and figure out how do we provide higher level value. So let's take this business model canvas and let's look at it again. We're going to reimagine our BA Café, okay? Clean slate. Start with a new customer segment. If I'm not looking at the project manager as my primary customer, and maybe taking this idea of agile is a good place to go, who would be my primary customer? Who represents my customer segment? A product owner. Exactly. How you know the right answers. We're going to put all this together very soon. So we might think in terms of before a project starts, how do we know we're doing the right project, even if it's not agile? Right? How do we know that we have the right scope? How do we know that whatever we want to do is the right priority? Right? It's going to answer the right needs. You need someone who might offer business analysis skills to do that. Right? Very possibly. Good. So we're going to think of the product owner as that persona. What does that mean to our relationships? How might our relationship to a product owner be different than that of a project manager? Is it going to be reactive? It's the reverse. It could be proactive. Excellent. And so we're working in what's called a change-driven environment, not a plan-driven environment. I don't know or pretend to know all my requirements up front. I'm open to uncertainty. I'm going to challenge assumptions, look for alternate ways to solve problems. Right? So there's a lot of things that we do. We become more consultative, more like a partner in that relationship. And so what does that mean in terms of our channels? Well, maybe we're going to do things like an agile project, right? Or maybe we work in what's called business relationship management or solutions architecture or any number of other titles that you may have heard of. So all of these things change. Our relationships change, our channels change, and our revenue stream also changes. If we can provide, and what kind of services do you think we might have? Right? So our fundamental service here is research, feasibility. Right? It's being able to provide better business solutions than what the team may have come up with without us. That has value. And we'll see how that translates into revenue streams. Let's look at the other side of that then. If we start with the product owner, let's pull this on the map. What do we say a customer relationship could be? Partner, and the opposite of reactive, proactive, okay? Becomes more strategic in nature, right? The other was more tactical in nature, okay? Our value proposition, channels. We said agile could be one channel for delivering our value. We're not having status meetings anymore. Maybe we'll use something like Six Sigma. How many people are familiar with Six Sigma? Okay. And it's one of any number of different channels that we might incorporate if we're looking at our product owner as the customer segment. We might look with help do product development. Is anybody currently involved in product development? Okay, Kate, Sheesh, right? Doing more product development. Anyone else? Okay. So what does that say about our value proposition? It's no longer just meeting goals, right? It's now doing things like design thinking. How many are familiar with the phrase design thinking? Okay, Sarah, I'm going to call on you. Help describe design thinking for me.
Well, I just want to think of design thinking is so the big thing of things about and thinking of you're trying to, how you're going to do that.
Excellent. So I'm thinking in terms of my customer. I'm using the lens of my customer to do my design, as opposed to designing the infrastructure and the process, and my customer is secondary. I'm making the customer primary, right? And therefore, the customer becomes key to how I do everything else. Think about this business model canvas. What's the essence of this business model canvas? What are we doing here? What does it express? Is it not an example of design thinking? Right? Because we're starting now from the customer's perspective, right? And then hoping to determine everything else from that. All right. So besides design thinking, maybe we have something near and dear to this class, security risk management. Now, I know that in every organization you deal with, managing security is top on their priority, right? That's the first thing to get funded in every organization, right? Oh, well, maybe not. Is there value to be provided by somebody who understands security issues, who can help sort through some of the risks involved, who can help be consultative, proactive with that organization, who can help the product owner, because that's not necessarily what the product owner is thinking about. And so that's just another example, and you can probably come up with a number of these. What does that do in terms of our activities? What are some key activities then? If it's not doing documentation and elicitation and facilitation, what kinds of activities are we performing at this point? Experiments, great, because it's good to experiment. And we know every experiment succeeds, right? No, but that's the point. We want to do what? Fail fast so we can learn. Exactly. Now, in an agile environment, we sometimes call this activity grooming. We take those elements that the product owner has identified as value the product owner is looking for, and we help groom that product backlog list, which means we help give it more detail, right? We help expose the issues. We help refine our understanding of it. We don't pretend to know all the requirements up front, because those requirements will evolve and emerge over time. So grooming becomes one of the key activities. Also, maybe we get to the point of helping to do something like a business case. Not by accident that this program is called Masters of Business and Science, right? Because you need both. You're not just a techie, right? You're not just speaking geek, you're also speaking business. And doing a business case on a project is a very important element. What kind of resources do we have? If we're now oriented towards our product owner, doing activities like business case and grooming, can you think of a resource that applies to this DA Café? Architecture, right? Because now we're more involved at an enterprise level. We know what are the different kinds of architecture that we might be involved with? Business architecture, systems architecture, keep going. Enterprise, what else? More people. What's one that's going to help me get to security risk management? Security architecture, do you not deal with that? Right? Applications architecture, network architecture. Do you have to be the expert in all these areas? No. You have to know how to spell them. Yes. You have to be conversant, right? I have to know that cloud is not just the fuzzy stuff when I look up in the sky. Right? I have to be able to have some concept of what it is and be able to explain that and why it's different and what that represents. Right? That's doing business analysis. So I have a lot of different resources. Architecture might be one. UX. Do you know the term UX? What is it? User experience, usability engineering, probably a couple of different definitions, but it's all around what the user's doing. right, as they see it, right? Because it'll work for the user or it won't. It'll be a good experience or it won't. It's very closely related to design thinking. Good. Are there more opportunities for us to partner if our product owner is the customer of focus? Give me an example of whom you might want to bring in as a partner. A salesperson, I would maybe think of that more in terms of a resource because they're internal, but think outside the organization. Helen. A vendor, sure. And in sales, what would a vendor be in sales? Just as an example. Like a Salesforce.com, right? I mean, there are applications engineers who know Salesforce.com and work in organizations. You're going to partner with Salesforce.com in that case. If you're in analytics, what would be a potential partner? What's a vendor there? Tableau, what's another one? Yes. And there are any number of them. I just picked one as an example. You know, Hadoop. Most people don't have any idea what's Hadoop. Right? What's Hortonworks, right? But has anybody had any experience with Hadoop? It's not easy, right? This is a tough challenge. Red Hat, another platform, right? These are not easy. Do you think that there's a calling for someone who knows how to partner with someone from that part of the world and bring that into the equation, right? To help your product owner understand what are all the different alternatives. Sure. So we could just fill that list. I mean, that's going to be a number of different people. So what does that mean in terms of cost structure? Well, software as a service, you know, I'm just pointing out some examples. Maybe we do prototyping, right? There's a cost structure there. There's a lot of different cost structures. But what about revenue streams? We no longer have question mark, question mark, question mark for revenue stream. If we are providing this kind of value to that particular customer segment, what do you think you might be doing in terms of influencing revenue streams? Do you have a direct contribution to revenue streams? In what way? I'm going to have to go louder. Sales, right? What else? Profit, what else? Capital expenditure would be on the cost structure side. All right. All right, so let's think about things like customer retention. Right? If I can use analytics or something else to help improve customer retention, if I can use the user experience to help retain customers, that's money in the bank. There's a direct correlation there. It's not that hard to demonstrate. We're now providing value. So what are some other things we do to provide value? Time to market. How important is time to market in today's world? Absolutely critical, right? You can get lost so quickly, right? If we don't have the kind of infrastructure, the kind of culture, the kind of everything else to support this kind of fast development. Or, as we talked about earlier, maybe a higher return on investment, right? It shouldn't be that hard doing business analysis. And again, I don't care what industry we're talking about, manufacturing, finance, pharmaceutical, food industry. Name an industry where we don't have a product owner who's concerned about things like retention, time to market, return on investment. Now, where do we want to spend our dollars? How do we prioritize? We can help determine that. Does this help give a different picture to the Business Analyst Cafe, the BA Cafe? Has anyone thought of describing what they do in these terms? Will anyone start thinking about how to describe what you do in these terms? And explaining what you do in these terms, and building a capability for doing this in these terms? How many of your organizations see this already? Any? Okay. How many need to see it quickly? Right? You can help do that. All right. So let's talk about this VA value proposition. We've gone through 2 exercises. We've used the business model canvas as a way to visualize one customer segment, which we described as being more traditional, less value added, subject to maybe even not being valued at all. And we contrasted that with another model. We reimagined business analysis with a different customer segment, a whole different value proposition. Okay? Well, do we think that that value proposition is something that's in the minds of CEOs? And the answer is yes. If you look at the IIBA.org website, there is a study that IIBA did recently with KPMG, appropriately titled Business Analysis Positioning for Success, and they determined in there that CEOs no longer are satisfied with these traditional definitions for business analysis. It's not giving them what they need. Right? They see that in the next 3 years, they will be undergoing more critical change than in the past 50 years. That's a big statement. And that's not far away. That's a short period of time. They see that their organizations are going to be going through a significant transformation. They need somebody to help them do that. Okay? What's holding us back? What's keeping us, as someone who defines our role as business analysis, from doing that? Well, the study also showed that nearly half of the CEOs interviewed said there's a lack of leadership awareness of business analysis skills. No one's done the marketing. No one's put together that value proposition. They're not aware of what business analysis can do. Another factor was lack of sufficient internal business analysis resources. They don't have the people inside. Well, if they don't have the people inside and you're entering the job market, what does that tell me? There's a lot of opportunity out there, right? They have an inability to effectively identify and recruit business analysis talent. They can't find you. Okay? Can't raise their hand. Hey, I know this stuff. Right? So that's the business analysis value proposition. By 2018, there's 2 more studies. One done by Gartner, one done by McKinsey. 2 key words we need to know, Agile and DevOps. Now, is there anybody who's not that familiar with Agile as a methodology? Everyone has okay, it's good looking into it, right? Let me say simply that traditional projects often work under what's called a waterfall methodology, where I define my requirements first, and then I do my design, and then I do my development, and then I do my testing, and then I launch, and everything is done only at the end, right? And it's all sequential. It assumes I know requirements up front. Agile says I don't know my requirements up front. I'm open to a lot of experimenting, discovery, change, and therefore, as a different methodology, it allows me to try something, do it, see what the reaction is, learn from it, try something else. So there are a lot of very short iterations, incremental, iterative processes in Agile. We need to understand the basics of Agile and how it works. Another term that may not be as well known, DevOps. If anybody worked with an organization that is currently seeking to implement DevOps? Has anybody heard the term before? Okay, Kate, how would you describe DevOps? Exactly. So if we're going to be developing projects incrementally, short cycles, I want to be able to launch them incrementally and in short cycles. almost to the point where it's continuous. Now, that's not something we get to right away. Has anybody worked in a quality assurance environment? Testing, right? You know that it's not easy to put something into production, right? There are a lot of issues involved. DevOps is working on closing that gap. And if I'm going to do Agile, I need also to be thinking about DevOps. It's like the implementation of Agile. All right, anyway, so here's the quote, that Agile and DevOps will become as disruptive to IT as Lean was to manufacturing. You know Lean? So what did Lean do? How would you describe Lean? Right, it's a way of removing waste, and it came out of a manufacturing environment. Toyota is given credit for a lot of the Lean methodologies, right? That's where Kanban and a lot of other associated things came from, you know, but that was disruptive. That changed how we did manufacturing. And that now has been applied to all industries, not just the manufacturing industry. Well, it says, Gartner says that Agile and DevOps will be as disruptive to IT as Lean was to manufacturing. That's a pretty bold statement. So it breaks down barriers. It helps our team work together so we all share in the business value. We come up with the kinds of metrics that we need. The other side of that is this idea of digital reinvention. What did Uber do, in essence? It reinvented the ride-for-hire market entirely. It made it digital, right? It provided the infrastructure. It did all kinds of things. By the way, if we were to go back and rethink the idea of the business model canvas, we said one of the persona that we might identify would be maybe the younger, more tech-savvy, more social media-oriented person, because that's a person who needs a ride, right? What other customer segments would apply to Uber? Who else is a customer of Uber? Besides the bar? Yeah, the driver. They totally changed that model. They totally changed the infrastructure, right? You're no longer owning a fleet of cabs, right? You now hire people who have their own car. All they need is an iPhone or something, a smartphone, and they're an Uber driver. Well, a little more complicated, but you get the idea. Now, they've also continued to extend that model. Let's rethink the business one more time. If I can deliver a person from point A to point B, what else could I deliver? Packages. So now they're partnering with whom? People like Walmart. It's a whole new business model, right? You can see how it doesn't take a lot to take this canvas and now just keep adding. Well, what about this persona? What about that persona? What does that mean to our value proposition? What do we have existing? What do we need to add? Great place for a business analyst to be involved. Anyway, digital reinvention, right, must address the value that the company provides its customers. Design thinking, right? It looks at it from the customer perspective. And I love this. Reinvention is the rethinking of the business. So we started with this metaphor of the BA Café. Business analysis is the business. We want to rethink that. We want to think of it in terms of a digital transformation. What does that mean? So if our old model was doing a lot of documents, writing things out, getting approvals, handing them off, can you think of different ways that we might work with our subject matter experts and get requirements conveyed and communicated? You think we can reinvent that in a digital environment? Maybe we take advantage of things like smart boards. We don't have to be in the same room now all the time. Right? We can simulate this face-to-face experience. It doesn't have to be face-to-face literally. We can use digital reimagining of what that's going to be like. Right? So we don't want to be constrained by what we knew. We want to reimagine what can be. All right, what does that mean for the future of business analysis? Here's two more charts that you might be interested in. This comes from a document called the CXO Guide to the Digital Transformation. This first one talks about what were the top drivers of the digital transformation. Why are companies interested in the digital transformation? 55%, evolving customer behavior and preferences. Because customer behaviors and preferences are changing, that's making me think about the digital transformation. Okay? Another reason, growth opportunities in new markets. Yeah, we're constantly rediscovering new opportunities, different markets. Increased competition. How many businesses that we work with have competition? Okay. Is the competition getting tougher and tougher? How do you survive in that environment? Well, digital transformation was one of the answers. Another one of the drivers, right? New standards, regulations, compliance, internal, external standards. Regulations might change once in a while in our current environment. We've seen that. That can have a huge impact. Okay? So these are some of the drivers of the digital transformation. Here's another interesting graphic. This is a company survey, right? 29% do not have a digital transformation strategy. Is that astounding? Is that an opportunity? For whom? For the business analyst with some digital transformation savvy, right? And we can think about that in a number of different areas. 18% are considering it, but they don't have formal plans. Another 18%, we're just in the planning stages. Okay. 22%, we have a formal strategy and we're actively digitizing our business processes. Well, that's great. And 9% don't know. If you don't know, that's a problem. Okay. And 3% had no answer. So where does the business analyst fit in on this circle? All of them, right? If you don't know, business analysts can help, right? If you've got a strategy, you can help. If you just started doing planning, you can help, right? Any one of these areas, there's a huge opportunity for someone who can reinvent the business analysis. That's it. Twice. All right. So, if we recognize that business analysis has an opportunity, how do we go about figuring out, again, where can I, as an individual, or where can we, as an organization, as maybe a group, work group in our company, fit in? How do we go about determining what are the things we need to do to be better positioned to be able to fill that gap? And here's another technique, and unfortunately I'm just going to spend a minute on this. I'd love to spend a lot more time. How many people are familiar with SWOT as a technique? Okay, stands for opportunity and threats. Unfortunately, when most people do SWOT, they only think of a quadrant, and they do strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What they haven't done is SWOT analysis. Right? They've done SWOT, but not SWOT analysis. Let's open up that grid. Let's think about what are our strengths. Then we can brainstorm that. Okay? And again, this can provide to me as an individual. It can provide to the group that I work in. What are my weaknesses? That's another brainstorming exercise. Okay? Now these things, strengths and weaknesses, they exist. They're internal. I can identify them. They're tangible. On the other hand, what are the opportunities and what are the threats? Again, two more different brainstorming exercises. Think about the opportunities, the things that are external, the things that are future? And by the same token, what are the threats that are external, that are future? They haven't happened yet. They're out there. Here's where the analysis comes in. How can I use a strength to help achieve an opportunity? That becomes a particular point of action. Okay? That's how I get from A to B. Right? This is a great technique. It's used in business all the time. Why not use it for business analysis or for business analysts? Right? For me, no matter what role I have, it's a great technique. You can do this with your kids. It's life skill. Right? How do I use my strengths to overcome threats? That's an important point. And I might have a different set of action items and strategies to be able to do that. Is there something that is in my list of weaknesses that will prevent me from seizing or realizing an opportunity, therefore some corrective action I can take? Right? That's another grid. And then, is there something in a weakness that makes me particularly vulnerable to a threat? Either that means it has a heightened sense of urgency, or maybe I'm in the wrong field and I need to change. So by using SWOT analysis, I can look at my career, where I'm currently situated, where I see myself going, what some of the obstacles are going to be out there in terms of threats, and I can gauge any number of different actions. Can you think of anything that would apply to you as students that you might want to do, given your current situation, or even if you're out there in the working world? Those of you who are in this program are already doing one very critical element of that. What? It's getting an education in those key areas where I'm not yet an expert. Right? Here's the opportunity. But for me to meet that, I need to know a lot more about BI than how to spell it. Right? I need to know a lot more Hadoop than, it's not something you do on a basketball court. Right? And so I learn those things. I need to know a lot more about security and the role that it plays and how to manage risks due to a security, how to bring those to the attention, even if I'm in a current organization. Right? So you can see how these things might lead to certain actions. So just a couple of different ideas. Anybody familiar with StrengthsFinder? Right? Have you gone through StrengthsFinder? Only Kate? All right. What did you think of it in terms of a technique? Did you get a lot out of it?
I liked it.
Okay. And whether it's StrengthsFinder or DISC or any other thing, right, what does it help you do? It helps you understand a lot about yourself and a lot about others and how to relate. I could put it very simply, right? So if I'm not good at that, by the way, if I'm going to play this role of business analysis, what do you think some of the key characteristics are that I'm going to need? What are the things that could make me a good business analyst in this world of digital transformation? If I have to be able to talk to business people and talk to technical people and be creative, a lot of interpersonal skills, among others, right? A lot of analytical skills. Right? StrengthsFinder helps you do that. It helps you understand what your current strengths are. It helps you leverage your strengths. Get a professional certification. Which also means doing something like getting a master's degree. And for any of you outside on the remote, who are currently business analysts, or any of you in the room, have you thought about going back to school? Not for nothing, but how about the Rutgers program, right? I mean, this is ideal for what we're talking about here. This would be a good career choice, right? And I was talking with Dr. Silver earlier. Part of it's online. Part of it's here. You don't have to be here all the time. I mean, there's all kinds. You can make the education fit your needs, right? That would be a good thing to do, right? If you're working on a capstone project, maybe help design a capstone project in an area where you really want to be, where you can add value. Seek out a company that's in the middle of doing that, whatever stage they're at, right? Whatever their driver is. if you're working on a capstone project, gear it towards some of this. Who is currently working on a capstone project? Can you see immediate application? Like, oh, I've been going down this road, so here's another idea. All right, good. Those are the kinds of light bulbs that we want to see go off. Good. All right, and BABOK, that's the business analysis body of knowledge. That's just the core understanding of what business analysis is about according to the IIBA. It's a starting point, and it will lead to a lot of these other things, which are known as perspectives associated with business analysis. So you can come up with any number of different strategies, different actions to take to help fill in your own personal goals so that you can help close those gaps between strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's just another technique. All right. So there's two more topics I want to bring in. One, what are some of the competencies that are being looked for out in the world? And this is just a list. We've talked about design thinking, right? Architecture, we mentioned that. Business intelligence. Who can describe business intelligence? Insights out of data, exactly. And an area that not a lot of people are familiar with, operational intelligence. Right? Are you familiar? Well, I'm sure you're familiar with IoT. You can spell that, right? The Internet of Things. Not too many people can explain it that well, right? But the impact of the Internet of Things is that they're now being embedded in the operations of a business, not just things like the cars you drive or the refrigerators or, the Samsung TVs that the CIA uses. I'm sorry. Shouldn't go there. But operational intelligence in the manufacturing operations, right? In any kind of operational environment. What insight can we glean from operational intelligence? A huge area. I love this. Have you heard of the SMAC stack? These are great words, right? SMAC is not that SMAC. Social, mobile, analytics, cloud. Right? All these things kind of together are what's called the SMAC stack, and I'm sure that a lot of you are deeply involved in that. Here's another one that we tend to overlook, organizational change management. These things don't get introduced into an organization necessarily easily or flawlessly. Right? How to understand organizational behavior, culture, how to change the culture. This is another huge area, huge opportunity. Has anybody worked in organizational change management before? Yes, Nikhil? Can you say anything about it?
Training for leadership for 2 months, trying to figure out how we put these percent operation.
Perfect example. So there's one from healthcare. And again, any industry, you can cite the same thing. All right. Business applications process owner. So business process owner, and I've thrown in applications process owner. I mentioned Salesforce.com as an example, right? Or someone who's conversant in, Red Hat or Hadoop or anything else, right? If you understand those applications, there's a role to be played as the applications owner in an organization, right? So it will evolve as the business needs evolve. You become that expert. You're familiar with business rules. Every organization has thousands of business rules. Right? That's also important. And I think almost another iteration of business rules, a little bit of updating, is called business modeling. How do decisions get made? A lot of organizations don't know how decisions get made in the organization. It's another great opportunity. And there's actually ways to structure that, ways to identify that, just like in a process map or any other type of detailed study, right? And finally, things like infrastructure and operations. So that's where we get into more and more elements like automated testing testing. We no longer bring in 100 people to pound on keys to see that something works. And that's not testing. Right? You want to build the testing in. In fact, you want to do more and more things like test-driven development, where you design the test and develop to meet the requirements, not develop requirements and then develop a test case and see if the development works. Right? So there's all kinds of different elements to that. And that's where DevOps comes in. And Agile, which most people, if they're familiar with it, think of it in terms of one team doing one thing, one product owner, one series of product backlog items. How do you scale Agile? It's a huge issue. So whether you're talking about SAFe, which is one disciplined Agile, there are any number of approaches now that people are struggling with. And it takes somebody who can understand that and apply it in an organization. So this is just a short list of different competencies, some more on the business side, some more on the technical side. Do you know the T model? Have you thought about having a specialty but also being a generalist? More and more of us wind up with our own T model, not Model T, the T model. Where are we? What area of specialization do we have? We're going to need that, right? But we also need to be conversant across the broad spectrum. Right? So become generalized specialists. And some of you also may have heard of VUCA, right? Dealing with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. This is what our organizations are dealing with all the time. If you understand that and can work with that and can explain that and can help provide solutions, you have a lot of value. So besides the competencies, let's just talk about the role of business analysis. I don't need to be the expert in any one of those areas per se. However, I do need to know how to integrate all those different competencies into an overall business solution. And so that's a value of business analysis, somebody who can do that integrating. And by doing that, maybe I'm going to get into product lifecycle management, or I'm going to learn how to do things like visualization. What have I done in this particular presentation? I've used visualization techniques like the business model canvas. There are hundreds of these. Right? It's a great way to help explain things, generate collaboration. Right? So modeling, business case optimization, risk management, all of these things are part of the value proposition for business analysis. And they kind of combine one or more of these particular competencies. In order to do what? In order to go back and meet that digital transformation, right? Go back. So I hope we're starting to connect some of the dots. Here's the task. I challenge each of you as individuals or as members of an organization. Maybe you have more than one business analyst or others in the team that you're working with currently. Come up with your own business model canvas. Think of who you want to identify as a customer segment and work from there. Right? Once I understand the segment, then I can come up with relationships, delivery channels, product or service offers. I have some understanding of what's the revenue stream, what my value would be, and of course, what's the other side of that? Oh, I didn't draw the picture. There's the other side as well, right? On the operational side. Okay, but this helps me reimagine myself, helps me think about that business analysis cafe as a business. If you have value, you're going to have customers, going to meet their expectations, have the right relationships, have the right infrastructure to support it, right? You will prosper, you will thrive and strive, right? If we don't have that sense of value, then we're going to be wax on, wax off, and our role is going to be more limited, and our value proposition will be more and more confined. It's our choice, right? We can help develop that not only for ourselves, but for our peers. We can help change our organization, right? There's a tremendous opportunity there. All right, quickly, I just have, and by the way, this whole presentation will be posted on our website, so you can get these slides. I know you're not going to copy down that URL. You're not going to memorize it. These are just some examples. I don't know how many of us currently have a list of resources that we get every day. We might not look at them every day, but at least we're exposed to them. We know what's out there. So newsletters. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Tech Republic or Tech Gig. Great. I mean, it's just an incredible wealth of information. And these are just, like I said, two examples. Conferences. Now, conferences can be expensive to attend. It might be worth it. If you're in an organization, maybe you want to explain to the organization, it's worth it for them to send you to the conference because you bring that information back to the organization, right? Make that pitch. But you get a tremendous amount of exposure to different conferences. So here's just one example, Gartner's IT Operations Strategies and Solutions Summit. Sorry, redundant operations. But there are any number of them. I mean, there's security, there's every trees.
you